What do you think their
So you
strategy?
wanted, so you wanted, so I understand then that you would have wanted Kamala Harris to have won this past.
Hmm. All right, let me phrase it like this: once it was decided, and once it was confirmed and locked in that the two options were Trump and Kamala, yes. Prior, no. I would have. There's 2 dozen people I would have put up into the that I would have rather have had on the Democratic ticket than her.
Okay, and I'll even like kind of be devil's advocate. Like I've been supportive of people like Bernie Sanders, Obama when he was there. Like there are ideologies that I follow, certain ideologies. Healthcare, school care, and such. The reason why I was so diehard about Trump, though, is because I do genuinely believe that our America in which we have been brought up, to preface, I am only 25 years old. So I'm not like a 40-year-old man talking like I was here for like Vietnam, Desert Storm, or anything. But this is just me in my 25 years. America has gone down, and I will 100% say that everything with China is 100% an issue that has been a thing before Trump was even in office, even a word. Even when I was little, I would always say, "Oh, why does this toy say made in China?" And my grandfather would always be like, "Oh, damn Chinese," and he would always do the, thing of, "Oh, it's the Chinese." But point being, I think it's about time that our country did get out from underneath their thumb. And I think that the so-called, I'm air quotating, trade wars is one of the greatest things that should prove to the other side that Trump does know what he's doing.
You're saying assuming it and we end up getting good outcomes from it.
I would say that we have already gotten great outcomes from it.
What would some of those be?
For one, we have already talked about lowering our tariffs with China. I believe that they're at like 20%, 10% from the 145 that they were at. So they were brought down. We opened up what $600 billion trade deal with Syria just recently, and not to mention all the things he's been doing in the Middle East, which has greatly helped the economy.
So
And we
wait, your
actually
real quick, your logic on the China tariffs is that it was a good thing that Trump put high tariffs on them so that later on he could lower those tariffs that he put on them.
Oh yeah, 100%, because that's how that works. You need to, if we're the ones who's buying, and like, okay, so if you're a business, and let's say I'm another business, but I need something that your business has in order for my business to work, it would make sense that I continue to purchase from you. And the day that I'm like, all right, I'm not going to unless the price goes down, and then also I'm going to charge you extra for selling my stuff in the meantime, that's where negotiations open up. And that's now why we're at the position to where they did talk in Geneva and things that,
Oh, you just cut off.
sorry.
No, you're good. Okay. So to be clear, I just want to make sure we're both on the same page. Okay, so I still not entirely sure I understand your logic about it's a like the idea that it is a good thing to put 145% tariff on China so that later on you could drop it to a 30% tariff, which to be clear accomplishes nothing. There's nothing on the back end there that you're gaining from doing that. Secondly, he didn't necessarily drop the tariffs all the way off. He paused them, and then the 30% that we have now is there in the interim while the original 145 is paused. The idea being that maybe we could work something out in that 90 days where that 145 would never have to come back. My guess would be it's never going to come back regardless of whether or not we get a deal because people on both sides of the aisle hated that so much. So even if in these 90 days Trump gets no deal with China, I would assert pretty heavily that we're probably not that 145 is just probably not coming back regardless. Um, I guess I'd be interested to hear you just articulate why maybe what because I have different I put forth different arguments when it comes to China, who I actually half agree with you on that we need it would be wise for us to be a little bit more adversarial with them in certain regards. Um, when it comes to some things, and we'll get into the parsing that out soon.
Mhm.
So I'd say we for now, if we're gonna have the economic tariffs are good argument, I would say let's just stick to China specifically
Mhm.
for now, not the whole
Because
world.
that's because we're gonna. I would
Yeah,
I would agree with you
Bec-
that the whole tariff thing is only for China. The other countries being in it is only because we can't just directly go after China. But I would agree that the only reason why these tariff wars are a thing is only because of our dispute with China alone.
Okay. So then, yeah, let's just do the China thing. Okay, good. I just wanted to separate that out because I have totally different arguments for the other. Like, I think tariffing Australia at all is fucking brain dead, but tariffing China in some ways can be good. Um,
Hmm.
then I will follow up with saying I still think the way it was done was bad and dumb. So then, uh, just give me your argument for why the tariff strategy against China so far is a good thing.
Well, it's just so hard for so our point of reference is also pretty difficult because we're referencing a lot of different people that are nothing like Trump. Whether or not you like Trump or you think he's a good president or not, if you're going to look at him in a completely unbiased way, you still see him as night and day towards any other president that we've had. He does not act like a regular president that we've ever had. So therefore, you will get a lot of actions that are not your normal, this is how a president talks, walks, and acts. So therefore, you're going to get some pretty harsh negotiations for countries and such that we have an issue with. He's negotiating on our. It's basically like hiring a lawyer. You know, we hired this dude to dispute our point to these countries, but instead of him backing down, being all like meek and everything, he actually used his point of leverage, which is how big of a player America is in the global economy. Even in Kazakhstan, the only reason I'm using Kazakhstan is because I have personal friends here. So this is the only reason why I'm using this as a reference. But in Kazakhstan, they have a currency called som. And that is how they purchase things. Like if I was to purchase from you, like a piece of gum, I would give you like 5 som. But if I wanted to purchase a house, they use the American dollar. They actually use the American dollar for all important purchases in Kazakhstan. So if the American dollar were to collapse because the tariff war has now made it where America is now not getting any imports or exports and everything is all screwed, the American dollar falling, it would not just hurt America. It would hurt countries all around the world that uses the American dollar. So therefore, it quite literally is in everyone's best interest when America, who is the biggest player, when they go, "Hey, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to raise all the tariffs until everyone gets in line because we currently are paying the global maximum for everything." And that's not even like a right versus left argument. It's like that quite literally is not right, that we are paying the most out of everyone. So he decided to do something about it, mainly to get towards China because they are also the biggest player. But that's how it happens. You need to put a huge, you know, piece in the negotiation. You can't just put this, oh, we'll raise it by like 5%, because what is China going to do? They're going to raise it 5%. When you go up to like a deal for a car, for example, they're not going to give you $1,000 over MSRP. They're going to put you all the way to the roof and then you talk down. It's just a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
harsh
Okay. All right. All right. All right.
negotiations.
All right. All right. Look, I let you filibuster for a really fucking long time. All right. Here, look, we have to stay on topic. I'm gonna ask again because I asked you a question that you didn't answer at all. Why is Trump's tariff strategy against China good for the U.S.? What are we gonna gain from his tariff strategy? What do we? I guess answer in two parts. What do we want to gain uh from our negotiations with China? And then how is Trump's tariff policy going to further that objective?
Okay, well, they do definitely have things that we need. They do have resources that we need, that we understand that we need. So there must still be trade between the two countries. So with that being said, it will still continue, but we're not going to be paying the same price that we're going to pay. So with that being said, we're also trying to uh, kind of bring ourselves into our own country and manufacture on our own grounds and be more self-sufficient.
Okay,
So
so you want to, so you
if
just
we break
let's go point by point. So I was waiting to hear something. So the first thing is you think that one of our objectives should be to bring back some manufacturing to America that China does for us right now, as it
yes.
stands. Okay, if it were the case, that was a main goal of ours. That was something we really, really wanted. How does I putting a really high tariff on China would actually go to that? It would, in a way, it would be at least pushing in that direction of like, look, we want to make we want some of these things to be made here. We're kind of sick of just having you, China, export fucking everything to us. We're tired of that, so we're gonna put a humongous tariff on you to force American companies to bring production here because the
It makes
goal
sense.
the goal would be to make it so fucking unbearably expensive to bring in stuff from China. If you're Apple, a super high tariff, the goal would be to make it so fucking expensive to manufacture iPhones in America or in China and then import them here that you're just like, fuck it, we're just gonna make them here. That would be the goal, right?
Yeah.
And that's what you're saying we should want or do want. If
Yes.
that's the case, you cannot possibly take the same stance you took at the beginning of our conversation. At the beginning of our conversation, you said it was a good thing that Trump lowered the tariffs now. That he just lowered them. You think that's good, but you also want manufacturing brought back here. Those two things are diametrically opposed. If he's
Well,
going to
he's
lower
not.
the tariffs, then American
He's not
companies.
lowering them. Well, he's not lowering them indefinitely. He's lowering them for the 90 days, like or 60 or 90 days. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but it is a temporary hold, for sure.
So you don't want a deal to get done during this 90 days.
No, I do want a deal to get done in this 90 days, and a lowering of it is a gesture of good faith in the meantime. Because if it was a whole thing of we lowered our tariffs, but China didn't lower theirs, that would be us backing down in negotiation. It's both parties saying, all right, in these 90 days, because in reality, think about it like this: people have issues with these, big industries doing things behind the scenes and the small people being affected. So what they're doing is, while the big boys are arguing like children, they're lowering the tariffs even lower than they were prior. In this meantime, during negotiations, which is beneficial to the people in America, in China, who are being affected by these negotiations.
I want an answer to this question. What the point I'm trying to make is that you seem to be sitting on both fences of you want us to come out of this 90 days with a much better trade deal with China than we originally had, but you also want to come out of this 90 days with a high enough tariff to justify American manufacturers and American companies not wanting to export everything from China. The idea being, okay, it's too expensive to have stuff made in China now. Let's make it in America. You want both of those things, but those two things are diametrically opposed with each other. You can't have both. It's either a
Well, I
good.
don't
It's
think that
either
we.
it's
I
either a
don't think
really
that we
good
should
trade
accomplish
deal.
both.
You're saying okay. So what is it? Do you want the manufacturing or do you want a good trade deal?
If I genuinely had to choose between the two, I would rather things be made in America. But if that is not, because in order for that to happen, you would need a complete restructure of how America works. You would need factories to be built. There would be need time to be built. There would be people. I'm not going to say that it's 100% possible for us to completely change the infrastructure of how America works overnight. But also, if the task of this whole thing is to fix inflation, if the two options are manufacture in the United States or stop getting taxed as hard as you are for the things that we are getting, those are the only two options. And if China agrees, if China was to say, sorry, dude, screw you, we're leaving our tariffs, then that will be the case. And I trust that my president will not back down on his tariffs. And then at that point, manufacturing in America seems to be the only viable option at that point, which is why we're in this 90 days of negotiations.
Okay, that's still not an answer. Listen, there is no universe. I don't understand. I guess the part that I just cannot understand from your position is what exactly you believe the current Trump tariff. And I'm not talking about tariffs in general because there's a tariff policy that could be implemented that actually probably would bring a lot of manufacturing back to America. To be honest with you, and that's just putting 2,000% tariffs on every fucking country. And it's like, well, if you don't want to be paying out the ass to import stuff, better start building factories, pussy. Like you just say that to every American company, but
Yeah.
then those American companies will probably up and just leave. I just want you to explain how the current day, what is today, May 15th, how Trump's May 15th tariff policy will affect manufacturing returning to the U.S. like literally at all, like in any way, even a little bit.
Because we have so I don't under, but I've already the tariffs right now are not just to make an outcome happen. The initial tariffs are to bring people to the table. That's what the tariffs were. It's like shaking a tree. You shake the fucking tree, everyone's gonna get the fuck out, and now everyone's like, who shook the fucking tree? And that's kind of what happened. Trump shook the tree really hard. That's why that one random penguin territory, like in no man's land, got a tariff when there was no one there. Let's blanket the whole world. Everyone comes to the table. You say your best offer, and that's what we're going to do. It's like a complete reset. That's why the stock market completely crashed. It's a complete reset. And yeah, it does suck when you're someone who's looking at the computer and seeing stocks drop and you're seeing all these things happen. But this is what happens in businesses when they need things done. Nothing can happen in transition perfectly with nothing wrong happening. So to go with this, oh, is this going to make manufacturing happen? All these trade deals? No, I don't think. I don't know what will happen. It could be either one. It could either bring more manufacturing into America. He might make it to where, no, I'm going to make it hard for American products to be made outside America. They are going to be made in America. Or he can make it like, sorry, you're going to have a massive tax on you if I'm going to be taxed from you. So like either way, I think it's going to be a win-win regardless because we're not going to be used as much.
Okay. The whole point that I was trying to make is that the reason I asked you up top, I always do this when people want to have the tariff conversation. For one, I want to make it clear that you can't have really good trade deals with every country and then also bring back American manufacturing. That's just not how capitalism works. If it is dirt cheap to have stuff made in China and then bring it here, that is what American companies will continue to do. So you're not getting both. I just want to make sure. And you said you understood that, so that's good. Not all people do. Some people do think you're going to get both. You're not.
Yeah, it's a negotiation of either one.
Well, secondly, once you say that what you would prefer out of those two options is the manufacturing part, then I just say my whole point here is to make you look at Trump and admit that what he's trying to accomplish is not what you want him to be trying to accomplish. He's said over and over and over that what he's looking for is to force, and you touched on it, you briefly mentioned it, is to bring all these people, bring every other country to the table to get America the best trade deal possible, where there's no monetary. He talks a lot about monetary barriers, currency manipulation. It's not that those things don't happen. He just makes a humongous deal out of them when they happen, but they're not huge deals. But what he's looking for is the best trade deal. He wants a world in which we can import and export stuff to everyone without getting. I don't want to say fucked because we're really not getting fucked. He's overblown that too, but just with the best conditions for us. If that happens, let's say he gets that, let's say he's successful. I don't think he will be, but let's say he gets god tier trade deals with every nation across the planet. American manufacturing is not coming back. That's a goddamn guarantee at that point. At that point, it'd be more beneficial for every single American company to just have everything made everywhere else and bring it here and import it.
Well,
so then you're getting the right. That is what's happening. It's not, some stuff's made in America, but yes, most major companies just get an assload of stuff from China. That is what's happening now. Trump doesn't want that to end. You can say it does. I've heard him say over and over, like, well, we're going to bring back American manufacturing. And then here he is the next day on TV saying, like, well, I've actually done these tariffs because I want to bring China to the table and I want a better trade deal. Okay, well, if you want a better trade deal, then that's just going to incentivize, like, do you think, like, if Apple gets, or if America gets even more favorable trading conditions with China, the Apple's going to be incentivized to make a factory here? They're gonna be like, oh shit, thank you, Trump. Like, and now we're gonna import even more iPhones from China now.
No, I get what you're saying completely.
So all I'm saying is that what he's doing and what you want are not the same thing. He's doing not what you want him to be doing.
Yes, but he's not doing anything that I'm against either. And what I'm saying is his whole thing with I want manufacturing in the States, which is his fallback on the trade deals not working out. If all the trade, like let's say that he puts up all the tariffs and not a single country comes up to his doorstep to negotiate, that would be his point of him saying, all right, manufacturing is to come back in America, we're going to be, for lack of a better term, screwed until we can figure this out. But this is what we need to do now because no one is exporting or importing any of our goods. And that's an issue, 100%. So let's say that we don't reach the agreement with China. China still does sell the majority of its goods to us. We are still its biggest buyer of its market. So let's just call
Individually, if you're talking about individual countries, I think the EU is
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the EU's tied with us with them, but I mean that's a
But
collection
yeah,
of
yeah, but we're
countries.
saying country by country. You know, like America definitely has a big pocketbook with China, and they would definitely notice if they didn't shop at their store anymore, kind of thing. So with that being said, let's say Honda, for example, Chinese company. So they no longer have Americans paying for Hondas. All right, it doesn't make sense for us to export Hondas to America. That's when we would then buy a factory in America to make Hondas to purchase and build in America. And now that will create an American job force, a union, and like there on and so forth. And that will create a job in America. And that's where it makes sense for the trade deals. If they don't work, is that eventually they will have to sell to America. If everyone was not allowed to sell to America, if there was an embargo that blocked America from buying from anyone else and our currency could not reach another country, we would definitely be screwed. I'm not saying this, but this is a made up fantasy world. Every other country would hurt just as much as us. Like they would notice that America is not in the game anymore because of how large it is. And that's not a right or left thing. We are the largest player, and it would be noticeable if we left the game. And that's what he's saying. If they don't want us to play it, we can leave it and we'll try and be self sufficient.
If it is the case, let's just say that there is no other country on the planet that could actually withstand the U.S. just completely pulling out from their market, not buying anything from them anymore. And that's a genuine fear that a lot of other countries have been expressing recently. I mean, you've seen it. Like a lot of other countries, like fuck, like America just completely leaving. You know, like the tariffs are hurting every other country on the planet as much, if not more, than us. So, I mean, and that is ultimately the gambit of doing the tariffs, right? The hope being like, well, it's going to hurt everyone else more than it'll hurt us, so they'll be more inclined to come negotiate. So, if that is the case, what would be the logic for why we don't already have 10 trade deals on the table?
What do you? Well, we've already talked to Great Britain.
Well, we've
We've
talked to a
talked
lot of
to
people.
Singapore.
We talked to a lot
No,
of
but
people
we've
all the
made
time. But
deals too.
where's the deals at?
We've dropped deals. I know that for a fact. I
Which
don't want
deal?
to. Hold on. I'm not gonna start shouting stuff at you and not knowing what I'm talking about. I want to be able to like. I know that there are.
There's proposals out the ass. There's a proposal over here and a proposal over there and a proposal everywhere. But where's the pen to paper written up deal?
Well, I mean, I would pretty much argue with that fact that we are at the points we're at least talking, which is even further than we've been at all the past 4 years. So, I
We
mean,
can renegotiate a trade deal whenever
timeline.
we want to. So that logic doesn't hold up. If we
Well,
wanted to renegotiate our trade deal with the UK, for instance, we could just do that.
yeah, but I mean, we currently are in the process of still negotiating with quite literally the entire world right now. It's not even like a man literally just hit his first 100 days, and it's like, why aren't there enough deals yet? Well, because we're still currently in the process of doing it. He's
Well, I'm
not
just
just
going based on what he said. He said he was going to start bringing in trade deals immediately, and he hasn't.
well, he's bringing a lot of people to the table, and there's definitely a lot of people like you just said, there are a lot of people or a lot of countries in this world who have definitely noticed these tariffs and are definitely up at the table. I'll argue, yeah, that Canada is kind of saying fuck you right now to America. China said fuck you as well. That's just like, I would kind of hope that these world leaders don't just bow down at the first month of getting a tariff put on them, because you also have to take into the fact, even though we're talking about our president, all these other world leaders also have their own people that also are up their ass, like, oh, you better not bow down to that tariff. Da da da. You know what I'm saying? Like, it is not going to be an overnight thing, but we are currently getting it done right now. Whereas the past 4 years, nothing has happened whatsoever.
Well, generally speaking, the only time you would do something psychotic like tariff the entire planet in order to induce trade deals is if you really, really, really like wholeheartedly believed that a trade deal that you had with someone was just not feasible. You know, it was something that just couldn't be sustained, right? Which I don't think there was any trade deal we had with any nation that was unsustainable. Um,
Okay, but sustainable is not different, or yeah, but you're using the word sustainable. Sustainable, just because it's sustainable does not mean that it's benefiting our country. Sustainable, we can be sustainable for all we want. We've been sustainable
Yeah,
since
but
long
the
before.
argument you're fighting right now is not the argument I'm making. I'm not saying we shouldn't be going for better deals. We should always be going for better deals. We should always be trying to improve, 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 get better, get better. And if we see an opportunity to seize a better trade deal with somebody, like Trump himself negotiated the USMCA, but if it came to be where he thought there was a way he could get a better trade deal, just through negotiations, I'm not saying, well, you know, you got the last one and it's good enough, so just don't even bother. No, always be trying to get a better and better and better deal. My point is, the only time it would seem logical or, how dare I say, non-childish to nuke every country's economy, including our own, in order to renegotiate our trade deals with fucking literally everybody would be if you were having an unsustainable trade deal with a country. If it were the case that China was, uh, I don't even know. Honest to God, I don't even know if there's anything China could be really doing that would be so out of bounds where it's like, okay, we're just gonna fucking nuke the economy and start fresh. Like, doesn't
Well,
you know?
it's the import export ratio, and of which what we're getting taxed on prior to the trade war.
Oh wait, wait, no shot. You're not one of the people that think you're not. There's no fucking. You've seemed like relatively smart this whole time. There's no way you think a fucking trade imbalance is a tax on Americans.
No, 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 no. Hold on. The statement that I made might have been too close together because there were two statements.
Okay.
There is an imbalance of our import and export. Period.
Yeah, a trade deficit.
There
Yeah.
is also already tariffs that were already there prior to this that might be sustainable, like what you're saying, but in the long term of us trying, because he's not just also trying to make it to where what we're buying is cheaper. He's also trying to cut our inflation while also lowering our debt. So how do you do that? You spend less. So if for every single country that we talk to, we're now spending 10% less with, now we're spending less per year per capita. So our debt is going not up every year. And so that's where sustainable, I get where you're saying, oh, it's not, or it wasn't non sustainable. You're right. America was not plummeting. The US dollar is now worth 1 penny. I get that. But when you start all this, now we're going to be paying less by the end of it, no matter what.
When you say just a quick check, just to make sure we're still on the same page. When you say we are gonna pay less, who are you talking about there?
As in the American, like the purchaser of imported goods.
Okay, so whatever companies bring it, you know,
Yes,
Apple
the
if they're bringing in iPhones.
purchaser.
Okay, just making sure. So
Yeah.
there's a couple things in there you said that must be addressed. First of all, you
Okay.
seem to show at least some concern for the national debt. You dropped that in there, that little token, um, and you talked about spending less to get the debt down. I would agree that if the national debt is a concern of yours, if you think that that's a big deal and we need to do something to address it, then spending less would be a good way to do that. I must then follow up and ask you why would you not be upset about the spending bill that the Republicans are proposing right now that would increase our national debt?
Okay, this is, I guess, a point where I'm not fully educated. What are you talking about?
So currently, we're the
When you say
Republican,
currently,
as in like
today on the 15th?
every single day, yes, because it's an ongoing negotiation. They're working through the process of getting our spending bill passed. Um, the current proposal from the Republican side would increase the national debt by a fucking lot more than Biden did over his 4 years. Um, and even a lot of Biden's increase in the debt was because of the Trump Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. I guess that I get that gets into a whole separate conversation depending on how you feel about taxes. Um,
Is this the no tax on tips, no tax on overtime bill?
Well, so that's an interesting statement because in theory it is, but neither of those two things are in the bill. So no, technically it isn't. That's
Oh, you're talking about the 300 some page or the 30 some page. I know what you're talking about. I need to find. Yeah.
yeah. So they talked about doing no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, but then when the proposal actually came out, neither of those two things were there. It's super weird.
Um, I don't want to get into a full blown argument on what and what is not on this bill. It might be a product of misinformation, but I 100% did see it on the bill and I saw it. I'm on my computer and I'm not about to try and screen share through my phone. But
Well, you're good. The point being,
point being, yeah,
regardless, I don't know how you could not be at least slightly upset about a bill that increases the national debt when you seem to care about the national debt.
I don't fully feel comfortable even bringing up the negotiate or like a rebuttal to that because I'm not educated enough to give you something that I would feel confident. And you catch me. Like I don't want to get into this when I don't know the bill enough to be like, no, you're wrong. I think of it like this because I don't know what you're talking about enough to reference.
Okay. So you would, so without getting into specifics, no specifics here. We won't do specifics. But you would be in favor, or sorry. Well, yeah, I mean, sure, I can phrase it like this. You'd be in favor of a spending bill that would ultimately, over the course of Trump's presidency, maybe beyond, decrease the national debt. So we would want to increase our income and decrease our spending.
So we would want to increase our income and decrease our spending.
Yeah, that is how you pay off debt, right? Make more money, spend less of it, so that you have the excess to put towards the debt.
Yep, yep, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean
that's something
that's
that would be favorable to you. You'd be for that.
yes.
Okay, I want to make sure. Okay, so then when we do get a spending bill passed, because it will happen eventually, even if there's they are having a hard time agreeing. Eventually, we will get a spending bill passed. You should come back to stream so we can talk about the spending bill that did end up getting passed. Because ultimately, like talking about the proposals is kind of I wouldn't say a waste of time. It's good to know what they're talking about doing, but until it's passed, it doesn't really matter that much. Probably not.
Yeah, because
But
it
once,
could go either
yeah,
way, kind of
it could
thing.
change it a fuckload by the time it actually gets passed. You never know. So
Mhm.
when one does get passed, you should swing on back.
Okay, true, true. But I mean, just as far as like the trade deals go, I personally see it as it's currently in the works. I see it as hopeful it's working, and I'm pretty confident in President Trump, and I'm pretty confident in my vote as well. Still,
Okay, we'll see. I guess the last question I want to ask you is, um, economically speaking, at the end of Trump's presidency on January 19th of 2029, sorry, where do you think our country where do you think the US will be economically on that day?
so I'm only gonna say this in ways that people will understand. 99-cent eggs, $1.30 to $2 per gallon. Um, bread is not crazy. Maybe milk is back to like $1.50. I see it genuinely going back to like those prices, because that's like the biggest thing that I noticed. I'm a full oldies. They used to do the 99-cent eggs. They're now closer to like $5 now. So you can see just that. So I like to call it the oldie egg theory. As the oldie egg drops, that means that our inflation is going down. So yeah, I see 99-cent eggs at the end of his term.
Okay. Do you understand why that would be two things? Okay, there's two things. Let's say eggs were 99 cents at the end of his term. Do you understand that what the state of our economy would have to be like for that to be the reality?
Well, it's just crazy because I've lived in that economy for quite a
Well,
time.
I know. So there's a failure to understand something going on here clearly. There's a difference between inflation and deflation. Prices will always inflate. That is the nature of a successful economy. Our prices will always go up. When you're 20 years from now, egg prices will be a lot more than they are right now. That is just a
So it has
fact
to do with
of the matter.
income.
Yes. Here, for prices to go down, that would mean we would have, especially to the degree you're talking about, to get down back down to
Oh, yeah,
99
yeah, yeah.
cents,
I
the
see what
amount
you're
of
saying.
deflationary pressure our economy would have to be under would almost necessitate that we would have a disgustingly failing economy. We would
And
be
then basically we would be making less money
a
if
lot to
my
get to that
world.
point. To that
Yeah,
point, I
you're
mean,
right.
Jesus Christ, the state of the American economy would be just gonzo.
True.
So
Okay,
that's
well,
really bad. What you just suggested. That's what you would hope. You shouldn't hope that. That'd mean we're
okay,
fucked.
well, obviously, I'm not looking for everyone to make less. That's a very semantic way of looking at it. I just clearly want it to be more accessible to get a carton of eggs. I want it to, whatever the equivalent of the 99 cents is, I want it to feel like I'm paying 99
Yeah,
cents
then
for
you'd be
eggs.
looking for stable inflation rates, and then pretty much exponential is not the humongous increases in wages.
Yeah, or so then that would basically make it to where the 1% would become, it wouldn't even become the 1% at that point, because then it would make it to where more people are making more money, which would make the what that 1% be different. Because in theory, like if the national average for the minimum wage now was $75,000, which is insane, like right now, if the minimum wage for every American was to go up to $75,000, that would mean that the rich, that number would significantly change as to what would be classified as lower income, middle class, high class, 1%.
Yep. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of laughing because what you're describing is, if you walked into an economic debate and started advocating for policies like that, you would be widely considered left leaning.
I mean, like I said, like I'm not gonna claim that I know everything. Like I'm gonna be man enough to admit that I just learned that I made a mistake in how I was talking about the eggs and stuff. Like clearly I don't know all that I'm talking about. I'm just an American that very much likes to talk because this is what I have the right to do. You know?
Yeah, no, definitely. Okay. All right. Well, look, it was nice talking to you. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you around.
It was fun.
Yeah, great times. Have a good one.